Welcome to the Feel Good Lab podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Gresh. Join me as we bring together the brightest minds in health and wellness, covering topics from sleep and nutrition to exercise and mindfulness. Our goal is to give you actionable advice to optimize your health and ultimately to feel good. Well, this was unexpected, but I guess we're going to do another episode of the Feel Good Lab podcast. I got my homie Pryce Yates, who we met back at UConn, my alma mater. You were playing football at the time. And kick it off, Pryce. Let's just chat about how we met and what you were interested in, because you came up to me at an event to chat a little bit about what we do at the Feel Good Lab. And now you're big into the wellness space. So let's kick it off with a little bit about your background and what you're doing.
Yeah, so we met at a networking event with some alum and some current student athletes. Ryan initially caught my eye because, I was kind of interested in some of the entrepreneurship stuff, and he is CEO founder of the Feel Good Lab. And I got to know more about his product, and I was like, oh, this is, something that could really help me. And so we started to kind of grow a relationship, grow a nice little partnership. And then it eventually worked into me getting the food inflammation test, which is on, like I tell people about it all the time, has made one of the biggest changes in my life, because I know what the foods that I'm putting in my body and how they affect me, has been crucial for my health of my stomach.
Well, and for some context, right? You're not just like any athlete. You're a badass Division I football player who won MVP of the Fenway Bowl against North Carolina. So, yeah. Right. So we're starting there. You're like top of the line athlete, and you were really excited because you were dealing with some GI things. So this has always been something you've been living with. And obviously you don't have to share more than you want to, but both those things are top of mind. You need to perform your best, but also, what's it feel like if your gut is acting up and you got a big training day or you got a game, right?
Yeah. No, I'm comfortable sharing. So I have Crohn's, so inflammatory, bowel disease. And so it was just kind of something I dealt with. It limited some of the foods I ate, but then there was also foods I ate that I knew I wasn't supposed to be eating, that I just kind of powered through. But yeah, like you're saying, how the gut makes you feel, not only physically, but energy wise, even emotionally. The gut is connected to everything else in the body, I would argue.
There's a couple things you said there. So the first is I was the same exact way. I knew that when I ate gluten, I didn't feel good. You probably did too. But it took getting the data for me to be like, damn, all right, I'll cut it out now. Like the data for me, I was the same as you. All of the wheats were in the red, highest level of inflammation. That data was what finally got me to make the change. I knew it all along, but that's what the test did for me. And then there were other foods on mine, like healthy foods that showed up. I think you had corn and white potato. Much lower level of inflammation, but for me, I had green beans,
Oh, really? Did you have any other vegetables or surprising?
I had one of the most surprising was turmeric. So turmeric, we actually sell a product.
Yeah, it's
good. It is right here. We have our inflammation support, which is curcumin, which comes from the turmeric root. It's one of the most potent anti-inflammatory natural things that we know. What's amazing is in my body, we were measuring how my blood reacts to these different food proteins. And this anti-inflammatory component in my body was triggering my immune system to create inflammation. So that's what's actually really interesting about this. Okay, the gluten, the dairy, the eggs, which are the big three we see in people. Yes, we know that if you were to just do an elimination, there's a good likelihood that one, if not multiple of those foods will make you feel better. There's a pretty good chance, especially the gluten. But who would have thought that turmeric and curcumin would be causing inflammation in my body? It's one of the most well-researched anti-inflammatories. Everybody is unique. That's kind of the magic of this test, right? There is no one size fits all.
I think it's pretty cool. I've recommended it to.
I appreciate that. And, we're going to talk today, we just got your new test results back. So we'll talk a little bit about what we're looking at. But the other thing you said that I want to hit on, we're starting to do a ton of research into the gut. Yes, we're a wellness brand. We started with pain relief, but what we're realizing is everything starts in the gut. And it works both ways. So when your gut is upset, like your brain isn't functioning as well, anxiety, these sorts of things. But at the same time, anxiety and these sort of things cause your gut, right? Everybody knows like when they get anxious, they get the tummy bubbles and all that sort of things. It works both ways.
Sleep.
We're starting to learn that people that work out a lot, that meditate a lot, have a healthier gut. How could meditation have anything to do with gut health, right? It's like, it's wild to start learning about the gut brain connection and how it plays a role in everything. But at the end of the day, and the goal with today's call is going over your test results and jamming on, all things wellness. But if we can get your gut to be a little bit more healthy, a little bit better at processing the nutrients it needs to, and not letting the junk through the gut lining that it doesn't, our body becomes so much better at functioning in all areas, not just in how your stomach feels.
Yeah, it's super cool. And that's something I've seen even more after I stopped playing. Like if you can see right now, my skin, like I got some sun glistening on it, but this is the clearest my skin's ever been, because after I stopped playing, I was able to cut out, the gluten, which I was having to eat because I'm having to eat 5,000 calories a day. And so now I'm able to see some of those kind of nice benefits of having a cleaner diet.
Same thing happened for me. Yeah, acne is one of the clearest things. We have some incredible before and after pictures of people we've worked with. In this one person's case that I'm thinking of, it was eggs. We're talking like 4 weeks later, he went from severe acne. He had tried everything, every cream, every potion, every shot, like drug. Nothing worked. He cut out eggs for 4 weeks. His skin was clearer than it had been since he was 12. It was unbelievable. And
awesome.
Food plays a huge role in that.
Yeah.
So how are you feeling overall right now?
Just like body-wise, energy-wise, what? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel good.
Yeah, give me a scale of 1 to 10. Body-wise, energy-wise, gut-wise. Obviously, you're still dealing with Crohn's. It's not something that's going to go away.
Yeah, I feel really good. I would say a 9, just because, I guess you can always feel better, but I feel great.
Well, definitely. And I know for me, my gut's been a mess too. I don't think I was as bad on the spectrum as you, but I was probably closer than you would think. Like, it was a pretty big deal for me my whole life. I didn't know how sick my gut was till it got better. Now I'm like, I would have told you I was a 9 4 years ago. Now I think I'm a 6 and I was a 2 back then.
No,
because it's put it into perspective of how much room I have to improve, but also like, dude, I feel this is by far the best my gut has ever felt, but also my energy in my entire life. And it was one, getting really clear on what I shouldn't eat. Me, it's gluten, the big one. Dairy and eggs I need to limit, but gluten is the big one. And the next piece is what we're going to talk about in this new report, is actually feeding my gut microbes the things they need to thrive, which is the right type of fiber. Fiber is probably the simplest hack that people can do to feel better. It's unbelievable. Have you done a little research since we chatted?
I after our call, I did some research, and I wrote stuff down, the different types of, what is it? The different, like, I don't know.
So I'll walk you through it because it's pretty simple, right? So I think you and I have talked in the past, we know what a probiotic is, right? We have these bacteria in our gut. Do you know how many bacteria or how many microbes we have in a healthy gut? It's crazy.
It's like more than millions. I don't know.
You're probably not going to guess, but just pick a number. 10 trillion.
Okay. Yeah. Crazy.
10 trillion. It's absolutely wild. So those microbes, in order for them to survive, they need food. And the food that they eat is soluble fiber, prebiotic fiber. So people are now becoming more aware of this term prebiotic. So you have probiotic, that's the bacteria. You have prebiotic, that's the fiber that they need to consume. And when they consume the fiber and ferment it, they produce this thing called a postbiotic. Pre, pro, post. That postbiotic, that thing called the short chain fatty acid, which is what we measure in your test, is going to tell us the performance of your gut microbes. Most tests measure the microbes. It's good information to know, but what are you going to do with that data? Hey, look at the percentages you have of these different 10 trillion microorganisms. Great. There's not much to do there. We're going to tell you if they are performing optimally and producing the things the body needs. And then we're going to tell you the right type of prebiotic fiber you need to feed the types of microbes that we need to produce more if you're not producing enough of the certain postbiotics. So it becomes much more actionable, but also measuring the thing that's really the performance of your gut. And I'll tell you right now, once we get you dialed in on fiber, I bet you're going to come back to me and be like, I'm an 8 out of 10 now because I was really a 7 before.
Yeah, for sure.
So I shared the report with you. Um, and the first thing you're going to see, and like, if you know, when this podcast goes live, with your permission, I'll share, you know, on the screen what you'll let me, but we're going to talk through it right now. You saw right off the bat, right? We give a gut performance score, like overall score of how well are your microbes producing these things that are important. You were a 60 out of 100. To be honest, that's probably about average. Average is not good. You don't want to be average, especially in America when it comes to gut health.
Yeah.
So it means we're underperforming and we got a lot of room for improvement. And that's the good thing. We're not talking about doing much more than eating more fiber. I mean, 95% of Americans do not eat enough soluble fiber. So if you don't eat enough soluble fiber, how are your gut microbes going to get enough food to ferment what they need? And then how are they going to thrive and survive? So out of the 10 trillion microbes, most people have a lot of bad ones because the good ones aren't getting enough food to be able to take up enough space and continue to thrive and produce these good things. So it's a double-edged sword. You need the good ones to produce the good things, but if you don't have the good ones, the bad ones take over and produce a lot of bad things. It's bloating, gas, like all sorts of negative side effects that come with that.
Yeah, so, that's something we were talking about last time. And so that score 60 definitely makes sense because I've been trying to start my meals with, you know, some raw vegetables to kind of stunt some of that glucose spike, just some of the other benefits of doing that I've read on. But boy, does that get my farts going. So
yeah, but the good news is anything really that gives you a huge improvement in the gut is going to have a small period of uncomfortableness. What we're talking about here, I mean, I told you, we're going to ferment more fiber, fermentation and bubbles, and there's all sorts of gassiness and things that are going to happen as we transition. But I'll tell you, if you were eating enough fiber, you wouldn't have that same impact when you start eating these sort of things because your body would be used to it. So in the transition period, you're going to feel a little bit more bloating and gas, but that's a good thing because the changes are happening.
Yeah.
And hopefully you feel that way a little bit. So into your score specifically, it's very interesting. There's 4 pieces that go into it. 2 of them, which are the ones that we would hope for, we got to really dive into and get better. 2 of them you got perfect scores on, and that's exactly how we'd hope it's broken down because 1, it tells us we got really accurate data, and 2, it tells us that we don't have any like severe toxins we need to take care of in your gut. So the 2 things that impact the score the least but are still important is stability. We take 3 samples. We want to make sure that they're consistent sample to sample, the same ratios, the same data we're getting back. When we see that, 1, it tells us we have a lot of accuracy going in because all those 3 samples are coming back super consistent. But 2, if you go and eat gluten or you eat spicy Thai food, we know that there's a difference in what's going on in our gut. And that difference can be pretty immediate. So we want to measure 3 separate days because we want to get data of what you're eating over the course of a week, not just what you happen to have yesterday. Right? That might give you a better score than what you might have tomorrow. So you scored perfect on stability, which meant the data was completely consistent across 3 samples. And then from a toxicity standpoint, we measure these neurotoxins that can really have a pretty negative effect on the body. There are only 4. There's plenty of toxins you could measure in stool. We're only measuring 4 specific ones, but you didn't really have any show up, which is very good. So those are the things you get an A+ on.
Increasing those toxins.
What would cause an increase in them?
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a lot of the bad microbes and you eat a ton of red meat, as an example, those bad microbes actually can eat the red meat and produce some of these. So that can be some of the consequences and side effects of people that eat a really high red meat diet. Now, if you have a good balance of microbes or you don't have a lot of those, then you're not going to have the same level of consequences when you eat the red meat. That's one example, right? Okay. And there's plenty of things that can cause dysbiosis in the gut. Obviously, having Crohn's is a piece of the puzzle, but it doesn't necessarily tell us that you don't have the right microbes and you don't have the ability to ferment the fiber, which, you know, the 2 pieces of data we already talked about give us a pretty good insight that by increasing fiber, we're going to see some great results. If you did have poor stability or really bad toxins, we'd actually want to cover that first, right? So luckily we didn't, and we can really focus on the fiber because that's the area. So you scored 60. You almost were a perfect score on those first 2. In your total production of these postbiotics, you were very low. Like, need to definitely pay attention. And by the way, you were pretty much the same place I was at. And in 4 weeks, I was able to get mine into the optimal range by eating enough fiber. You know, there was some bloated days in those 4 weeks as I kind of ramped up my fiber, but it's pretty quick to change. And then the other piece of the puzzle is we want to look at, there's 3 main postbiotics, or what I'm going to call short chain fatty acids. That's the scientific term for them: acetic acid, butyric acid and propanoic acid. And you want those in a 60-20-20 ratio about. It's slightly off from that, but for round numbers purposes, 60-20-20. And we need to make sure that's in a tight ratio. So we need to produce more short chain fatty acids, but we need to make sure we're producing the optimal ratio. That's super important. You are off in both those. And that's a good news because we're going to produce more. We could probably triple your production of short chain fatty acid, but also we're going to modify the ratio. So we're going to give you the right type of fiber for you that feeds the microbes that are going to produce some of those short chain fatty acids, but not others. Because in your case, if you were to go to the third page of the report, you'll see you produced too much acetic acid. You scored a 21 out of 35, but you'll see in that ratios there, the acetic acid is too high and the propanoic and butyric is too low. That's exactly what I was, and that's exactly what the majority of Americans that we test. And I say Americans because one, there's a similarity mostly in the diets that we eat. There's obviously a genetic component of this, but the American diet produces a lot more acetic acid and a lot less propanoic and butyric. And symptoms we see of that, for me, indigestion like crazy and low energy. So butyric acid, we have the ability to probably triple or quadruple the butyric acid you produce. Yours isn't even as bad as some people we see. Butyric acid is 20 to 25% of the energy in our body, a lot of it mental. Just that one short chain fatty acid. So think about if we could triple this thing that's up to 20% of your energy, that's a huge impact in how you feel right there, just in the butyric, not to mention all the other magic that these short chain fatty acids work. If you did a little research on them, they fuel our immune system. They create the gut lining and the gut membrane. I mean, they play an enormous role in our body's functioning. And the way we impact them is by feeding the right microbes, the right type of fiber. It's very simple, right? But we had to measure them first before we can recommend what type of fiber you take. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So why is this good news? Because we can increase the production by eating more fiber and we can get those ratios dialed in, which should make you feel a lot better in your gut, even in the skin you had mentioned, energy, and just overall giving your body what it needs to function. These short chain fatty acids are some of the biggest keystones in all of our health. And all we're going to do is hopefully get your diet. We want you to get as much fiber as you can from your diet. And then whatever we need to add otherwise, it'll be like the cheapest supplement you've ever taken. It'll be like pennies a day, right? Because fiber is very cheap. For me, I fast all day, so I take a fiber supplement. And we'll recommend, in this report, we recommend specific things that you could take. So that's the big takeaway from this. We go to the page of the report. This is your fiber plan. It's kind of towards the bottom. And you're going to see the exact type, which is the same type I needed, of fiber that we need and the amount we need per day. Beta-glucan and AXOS. I'm going to butcher this name. I'll try to pronounce it for you. Ready? Arabinoxylin oligosaccharides. That's the name of AXOS fiber. But what is it really? Wheat bran, oat bran, rye bran, barley. And then you can get specific supplements with just the AXOS in them. So you might think of like, and by the way, we're not going to recommend you take wheat bran because we don't want it to have gluten in it. At the same time, the bran of the wheat is the outside portion. It actually doesn't have gluten, but it is exposed to it. So we're going to pick a different form of that type of fiber for you. And for most people, we recommend a different form. You can get it from, rice, and I like the oat bran form. But we eat a lot of wheat in America, right? So why would people be so deficient in this type of fiber? Well, when we process our wheat, guess what we take out of it?
All that good stuff.
Bran. Yeah, the good stuff, right? And then we do all sorts of bad stuff to it to begin with. So, the other piece too is in the beta-glucan. It's kind of like a two birds with one stone. Oats is really high in AXOS and high in beta-glucan. And beta-glucan is a specific type of soluble fiber. It is really, really good for you. It helps regulate blood sugar. It helps promote healthy gut. And it feeds obviously those beneficial bacteria that we're measuring if they're producing enough short chain fatty acids. And beta-glucan was the one that you need the most of, which is going to really help lower the acetic acid, increase the butyric, increase the propanoic, while still increasing the total production.
And so you said the ideal ratios is 60-20-20. What are mine?
Yours were 69-15-16. Not awful, but definitely not where we want them.
Yeah.
And in fact, if there was any that we could see high, I actually I overshifted mine a bit but it was okay. The butyric acid, mine went from like 14 to 23. So my
Mm.
butyric was a little bit higher. But again, butyric is an energy producer, and there's a balance. It's not every single person doesn't need to be exactly 60-20-20. The literature and the research and the clinical studies have shown like optimal guts are around that 60-20-20. But I'll tell you this, if you're going to pick one to have high, it's not acetic acid.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So,
Yeah.
and kind of on the butyric acid, right, that energy producer, we found in elite athletes, they're higher in butyric acid, both genetically and because most elite athletes are taking care of themselves better.
Mm.
But also studies have shown that exercise increases butyric acid, meditation increases butyric acid. So there's
Okay.
this gut brain connection and exercise and other things that we do that impact the gut microbiome more than just the food that we eat.
Yeah, I bet my working out and I actually do meditate has kept my butyric acid just somewhat at a operable level because without, all that gluten, it would probably be much worse. Because you're saying
Yeah.
the
And
main
are you
sources are
do you eat oatmeal at all?
I don't eat oatmeal. I bought some because I wanted to get it into the diet, but I haven't found a way that I like it. So
Yeah. Well, there's going to be ways, and we'll chat about it. Listen, I'm not a nutritionist, although my mom is, but that's not. You don't want my cooking. However, obviously, I've worked with a lot of people on this, and like the key is finding what works for you. What works for me is I take them in supplement form, and I try to get as much fiber from my food as I can. So having a really good, serving of veggies, some real, I like to have a banana every day.
mm,
There's certain veggies that are higher in fiber than others. And there's a big difference between insoluble and soluble fiber. They both play a very important role, but everything we're talking right now about feeding the microbes, the prebiotics, is soluble fiber. Insoluble fiber has a different role and it's important, but if you took something like Metamucil, you ever heard of Metamucil? It's like a something for constipation. So it's a recommendation for people that have different bloating constipation issues. It's mostly insoluble fiber, and that's going to help with stool bulking and whatnot. There is some soluble fiber in there as well, but the point is when we get things from nature, we're getting both soluble and insoluble fiber. And the
mhm.
balance, nature does an amazing job of giving us the right proportions of things to make things function better in our body. So it's always better to get things in the natural form than just taking supplementation. And supplementations are going to be better than drugs, which is like a whole different story around how
Yeah.
pharma takes these things in nature and then synthesizes the one piece of it that does one job really good, but you don't get the synergistic benefits of how it actually worked in nature. Almost every drug came from a natural component that we learned about these things. And then you can't patent nature. So there's a whole different downstream of like why pharma became what it is when nature can sometimes do that role even better with less side effects because of the synergistic way that we could never recreate the way that nature has built these amazing things for our body to be fueled. And so if we can get this right fiber through your diet, and I think you're focused enough to do it, that's going to be optimal, but we need a lot of fiber. We're talking about 8 grams increase for you to move the needle where we need to. And you're probably going to want to still do some supplementation on top.
Okay. No, yeah, I love hearing you say that you like getting it from nature because I mean I'm a big believer in that kind of the holistic kind of that earth derived
100%.
type of mindset and like I got my blood work done recently and I was zinc deficient so did a little research and now I'm eating oysters almost every day and so it's stuff like that where I like just I definitely know I'm capable of adjusting my diet to getting some new foods into just the routine. I think that's the biggest thing is just building a routine, building habits that have foods that support you.
And here's some things. So there are certain areas. There's a couple reasons why you would have. I lean pretty heavily on supplementation because I don't eat a lot. I found that
Mm.
I function better without eating. That's just my body. I wouldn't recommend that for everybody. So like I don't eat lunch or breakfast. But how am I going to get all the nutrients I need if I'm not eating? Well, I eat a very good healthy dinner, and then I definitely make sure I get the supplements I need. The magnesium, the things like that. I
So
would
when do
prefer to
you eat
get
your
it through
first
food.
when do you eat your first calorie, your first meal?
It depends. It changes. So like when I'm really dialed, it'll be like 4 or 5 o'clock. Like I have not eaten yet today. I
Yeah.
typically have been like snacking on some cashews recently around like 2 or 3, and I'll get in a habit where now I'll break my fast around 2 and 3 and have some cashews. And then the more I do it, the more I start getting hungry around that time. I feel
Yeah.
like I'm at my best when I don't eat until like just pre-dinner.
Okay.
And then, but there's been days where I'll play basketball at 8 o'clock at night. I'm 39 years old. I'll go play basketball at 8 o'clock at night and have not eaten since the night before and go play for 2 hours and run around everybody. Like that's just
Really.
my body. And
That's super
so,
interesting.
a lot of people couldn't do that, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I started getting into the intermittent fasting, and I had played with it as well. I started, eating at 12, and then I eventually got around to the like 4 or 5 range. But for me, my body, especially, I can feel it in my thighs, like they just feel so fatigued once I start getting into those later hours of the fast. So now I'll try to get my first meal just around like 12 or 1, just so I can be feeling energized for my workout, which I usually
Yeah.
do around
And you find
6.
what works for you. The term I like to use is metabolic flexibility.
Okay.
And basically, what it means to me is like, I want to be able to function when I'm full. I want to be able to function when I'm fasted. I want to be able to do it all. I don't want to only fast every day, but I want to only eat 3 meals a day every day. But I want to be
Yeah.
able to do both. And I would say if there was one thing that I could do, if I got sick, God forbid, knock on wood, like really sick, I won't even say the word. The first thing I would do would be stop eating for 2 weeks.
Really.
One is that's the first thing I would do. I don't even know, like, I do know that there is some science behind it. I would, of course, if that were the case, would dive into the science. But here's what I do know. A lot of our food is making us sick. Even when you eat healthy, the pesticides and things that are sprayed on our food, it's
Mm.
like, it's hard to get away from. So a lot of disease does come from our diet and our external factors. So I would just cut off what's going into the system for a bit. And I would just give my body a break. The reason I started fasting was I started learning about this guy, Wim Hof. I think I even told you about Wim Hof when we were chatting last. He's the breathwork guy, cold exposure. If you haven't seen his stuff, you should definitely check it out. It's
Yeah, I'll check them
unbelievable.
out.
He holds like 20 world records, the longest cold exposure, climbing Mount Everest in a bathing suit, running a marathon in a desert with no water, crazy things, hanging from a helicopter with a finger. And the guy eats 1 meal a day. And he's like
Oh,
60 years old, maybe 70 now. And he does it, breath work, cold exposure. He's an absolute freak. And I was like, if this guy needs 1 meal a day, like, why do I need multiple? It just gave me this idea. And then I started doing some research. When you eat 3 meals a day, your body is almost always sending energy to your gut to digest. It doesn't have that time to do the other things. And I was like, let me just see what happens when I give my gut a break. And I started feeling so much better that I really
mhm.
never looked back. And I had a sensitive stomach, and you just probably like you. So eating less made me feel better. And then I found like kind of the happy medium for how many calories I need. I'm small. I'm 150, 5'10". You're probably what, 220? So like you need a lot more calories than I do, but
Yeah. Yeah, that's the other thing is if I fast until 5, and then it's like, okay, now I got to get 2,500 calories in like 4 hours. It's like, because then also I don't want to eat right before I go to bed.
right.
So,
I don't
yeah.
do a good job of that. That's the place I fail the most. I do eat before bed,
Okay.
which is not good. It probably like takes all the benefit of, it takes all the benefit of fasting all day away. So here's your total gut score and all the things we talked through. Here's your, how the score is calculated, right? 35, 35, 20, 10. That adds up to 100. So how do we get there? Well, these are the scores you're getting for each of those sections. So 10 out of 35 for the total production. We've got a ton of room to improvement. The number one place for improvement is we've got to produce more of these short chain fatty acids. Then
Yeah.
we have the balance, those ratios. You weren't that bad in terms of ratios, but still room for improvement, right? 21 out of 35. Non-toxicity, almost a perfect score. And then stability, you got a perfect score. So, and then further down in the report, and then here's the fiber plan. All of this gets broken down in more detail as you go through. So total
Oh, that's awesome.
production, here would be optimal. You can produce too many short chain fatty acids. There's things like SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, things like that could potentially have somebody producing too many. Very few people. In fact, we haven't tested anybody that is producing too many. But you can see kind of like you're very much on the low spectrum here. So we can get that up significantly into the optimal range. And then this, when you do open this up, it educates you a bit about like, what does this mean? What are short chain fatty acids? What does my score kind of indicate? And then you might be one of the few people that dives in, but you can see here links to certain clinical studies about, kind of the science behind this.
Oh, awesome. So
Here's the balance you asked about, right? Your ratios.
Yeah, you had mentioned that to get my fiber back up to optimal, I would need around 8 grams. W- Did I hear that correctly? And
Yes,
then also, what would that
correct.
look like as far as just like regular foods that we eat getting that much fiber? Like, how much is that?
Yes. That's a great question. So here it is right here. Here's in your fiber plan, right? We're going to see. So it says 13 grams. You're like, I thought you said 8. Well, 5 of those is a optional psyllium husk. And psyllium husk, like I mentioned, is that metamucil insoluble fiber. So that's kind of that thing we talked about. How does nature do it? Well, nature usually gives you both, right? It's not
Mm,
just the soluble fiber. However, you're very likely getting more insoluble fiber than soluble fiber. Almost everybody is. So that's why this is an optional to add that in. The 8 grams comes from the two types AXOS, that's that oat bran, wheat bran one I talked about, and then beta
okay.
glucan, which is the 6 grams a day. And in this report, there's a few things. One, there's the clinical studies that talk about people that increase beta glucan and change the ratios and the production. So this is all like very, very science backed in terms of input being soluble fiber and output being changed to short chain fatty acid production. That's how
Mm,
these algorithms come out in the recommendation. And then there's also a link to a powder if you wanted to supplement with it. You could click right on here to see. Your
okay.
question is the right one though. How do I get it from my food? You'll see here the types of foods: mushrooms, barley, oats. But then there's other specific foods that, again, I'm not the dietitian nutritionist, but I can help you. We can do a little research. There's going to be other foods that are going to be higher in beta glucan, but those are the most high. The oats, the barley, the mushrooms.
Okay.
Mushrooms being a super healthy food, right? For most people. And I'm looking at your food inflammation test, and you did not have mushrooms on there, so that would be a good one to eat. And then on the AXOS, that's different. So you'll see oats here on beta glucan, but in the bran, that outer shell of the oat is where we're going to get the
Mm,
AXOS, right? As well as rye bran, right? Those outer shells and barley. And then you'll see down here is your bonus. So a lot of foods that have fiber, we'll use psyllium husk, and then you'll see like there's a big boom in all these foods that are, these drinks and high, soluble fiber prebiotic drinks. Well, they have a pretty cheap single form of fiber that's very likely not going to be the optimal one for most people. Is it fine? Yeah, it's fine to consume, and it's probably better than nothing. Is making sure you're getting it, but you're only going to be feeding those certain microbes, and very likely, and most people we test, AXOS and beta glucan are two soluble fibers that they need more of in their diet to get the right microbes fed.
okay. No, I'm excited to get that dial in, and I've been looking into the mushrooms too. I had mentioned, my dad's company, and so we're planning on getting into the mushrooms a little bit more, the non psychedelic ones, of course. But that kind of works out that'll help me with getting my fiber right.
Definitely. Yeah. And listen, I'm going to be here, so let's stay in touch over the next few weeks as we start dialing this in. Here is probably the most important thing I'm going to tell you. I hinted at it before.
Hmm.
Do not go straight to 8 grams of soluble fiber. You're
Yeah,
going to be you're going to be a musical instrument walking around. We're
yeah.
going to start with 1 gram, and then a day or two later 2 grams, and a day or two later 3 grams, and you're going to work up to it. I went way all in right away, and I had 2 weeks of like pretty severe bloating and cramping. Severe, not severe. Bloating and cramping. Is it comfortable? No. Was it the end of the world? No. And by the way, after 2 weeks, like I actually liked that I expedited it because I felt so amazing after 2 weeks. It's part of the reason I had it such a quick transformation. But in hindsight, it probably would have been better to go a little bit slower into it.
So based off that scale, and I need 8 additional grams. Does it say how many grams I'm averaging a day?
It doesn't. No, we could estimate that. Um, we could
Good.
estimate it by looking at like the foods that you're eating. Um, you know, let's just see. Yeah. So you're probably getting 3.
Yeah.
You want total fiber um, of about 30 to 38 grams of total fiber, and soluble is going to make up a component of that.
Okay.
So Yeah,
Okay.
based on where your score came in. I mean, it's hard to know for certain, but like if you Google like, say 10 grams of soluble fiber, like how much food is 10 grams of soluble fiber? It's a lot. So that's why it's hard to get it all through your diet, right?
Yeah.
Um, you know, so this right here says, okay, like this just gives me 3 medium avocados, 1.5 cups of black beans, 2.5 cups of cooked oatmeal. Like that's a lot. And by the way, that wasn't balanced for AXOS. The beauty of AI is actually I would recommend you leverage some of the feedback we got from the tests, put it in AI, put it with your blood work, put it with your food inflammation test, put it with this, have it help come up with a plan of
That's a great
like
idea.
where can I get this fiber from? It's brilliant. We've crossed the threshold in the past few months where like in a lot of cases, it's as good as the leading expert in the field, if not better. You have to be careful and you have to take it with a grain of salt and you have to be thoughtful about it.
For sure.
But its ability really quickly to take all this detailed information, especially the blood work you just got, and be thoughtful about how things interplay together would blow you away.
Well, yeah, because that's exactly what I was gonna say is like you just articulated, it's gonna take the data from my food inflammation test, it's gonna take the data from my blood work, and it's gonna take the data from there and use it all together, and then use the whole entire internet as well, and so
And if I wanted to be a show off, and because you had sent me the blood work, I probably should have done that and pretended like I was some genius here, like putting all the pieces together.
yeah.
But the truth is, like, yes, each one of these tests independently is unbelievable. Like you've already learned what cutting out gluten based on the data was able to do for you. The
Mhm.
fiber is going to be another piece. When we can do these things in conjunction, when you get the zinc up, when you get the fiber dialed, when you cut out the gluten and the inflammation caused by that, 1 + 1 + 1 will equal more than 3. That's the magic of our body. So it's I'm excited to see how you're feeling. You're not going to be a 9 out of 10. You're going to go down and you're going to realize you went way up.
Yeah. No, I'm excited to go down a little. I'm excited to see that the roof's a little bit higher than I think it is.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. But you got any final questions for me?
No, I'm excited to just dive into some of that data a little bit more, and then I'm sure once I do, I might have some more questions. But I guess for you, as far like I'm curious, what is your average dinner?
My average dinner, so my wife will make usually like we have a 3-year-old son and she's very, very good about feeding him organic, healthy food, which
Mm,
drives into us. She's always eating really healthy. So it's great. Like I don't have to think much about it. There'll always be a good serving of vegetables, usually some broccoli, asparagus, or sweet potatoes. And then something like chicken and rice or some sort of healthy meal there. I
yeah.
cheat a little and I'll have like a small piece of white chocolate for dessert. And then I usually will like snack a bit. I'm a night owl, so like I snack around 10, 11. I'm having sometimes some things I shouldn't eat, but usually it's like cashews, stuff like that, almonds. I really like nuts that are good for me. And then I go to bed and I don't eat again until I break my fast sometime between 3 and 6.
Yeah. My treat recently has been the same thing. I have like four different nut butters in there. I'll go in there with a spoon, just start going crazy on some cashew butter, some peanut butter.
Yep.
Yeah.
I've been trying to get more fruit too, so I'll try to eat a banana. I try to break my fast with a banana.
Really?
Um, I don't know. I just make. It's funny. I don't even like the taste of bananas, but they've grown on me. But I don't know what it is. It's probably high fiber. That's probably a piece. We've talked to you and I in the past a little bit about how like sugar is not just sugar. Yeah, fruit has a lot of sugar in it, but when it's balanced with fiber and other things, like we talked about nature, it's not the same as just eating a bunch of sugar. When it
Mm,
comes in balance with the other constituents, there's a synergy that happens where you don't get that crazy spike. And sugar is not, like sugar is not the worst thing ever. Too much of it,
yeah.
of course, especially processed sugar. But for whatever reason, breaking my fast with a banana like gives me a lot of energy.
Oh, I had thought that bananas like really had a stronger glycemic index.
They probably do, and I'm just kind of going like I'm not going on the science there. I haven't done any research. It's just like how I
How
feel
you
when I
feel
eat
off
it.
of it? Yeah.
Yeah,
I
and
love.
and for whatever reason, I feel healthy with my stomach.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. I love. I think I have about a banana a day. I had one this morning on top of some rice cakes before I worked out. So
And
1,000
so
steps.
that's more data that we should put in, right? If you're gonna, I would recommend what I've been using is Claude. Claude has been unbelievable. Like,
Mm,
or ChatGPT is fine too. We're gonna go in, you're gonna put all the reports in, and then put in like your exercise, like all the data you could feed it.
oh yeah.
And it's gonna like, and then we can iterate too. So it'll give us a first piece of report, and then it'll be like, think about it like you're a top doctor in this space or a functional medicine practitioner, and help me come up with. And then you could even be like, visualize it into a website, and it's going to give you the most beautiful website you've ever seen in 2 seconds of like
Yeah.
exactly where you're at and where you need to get to, and what are some of the lowest. You could say, what are the 3 lowest hanging fruit I can do to improve, and don't even put in necessarily what you and I talked about yet. Add that in later, but like see what it comes back with. And I would be surprised. I bet some of the stuff is consistent, and it'll probably have some new stuff in there.
Yeah. That'll be interesting to see, like without even mentioning the fiber stuff, and then it tells me to get my fiber right.
Yeah, I mean, you'll put the report in, so it'll see some of that for sure. But you don't lead the witness. I like to not lead the witness, but then I like to make sure I finish with my perspective on it. I like to make sure the AI I work with has a soul. And what I mean by that is like, I don't just put something in, take what it comes out. I really think about it. I usually like to start with something. So in your case, it's going to be the test and a little framework about where you're at. And then I don't just like take its first piece of feedback as like, this is,
Yeah.
the Bible. No, I make sure I understand it. I ask questions. I question it. You'd be surprised at how many times you question it. It's like, oh yeah, I was completely wrong. It's like, it's kind of weird in that way. So that's where you need to be careful, but it gets you so quickly to a place that can be beneficial and helpful. Like, it's scary.
Yeah, it is. It is.
So in closing, Pryce, tell people about where they can find you. I mean, you've been putting out some good wellness content on social media. Where can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram or TikTok. I post just first and last Price, PRYCEYATS. Just content on kind of fitness stuff. I love posting some hip mobility, some hip strengthening. I think for the athletes out there, your strong hips are key to just longevity and success. On the court, on the field, wherever it may
Bro,
be.
my hips are broken, and every time I see your post, I feel so down on myself because I know I need to do more hip mobility stuff.
Yeah,
And I just like, maybe this is my calling right now to
this
actually
is
get
your
dialed.
calling. This is your calling, and you can go on my favorite one of my videos, and then you'll have it there. But no, it's good stuff. I think the hip stuff is similar to stretching in that when you first start doing it, it sucks. You really don't like it at all. And then as you do it more and more, like stretching, as I hated it in high school, and now like that's my sanctuary. You know what I mean? So, and then
Yep.
also
It's
just
going to
I've
be like
gotten
the fiber. You're going to hate getting all bloated for a couple weeks, and then you're going to love it because you feel so much better.
yeah, yeah. And so then recently I've started posting some more nutrition stuff, but I'm excited to talk about this fiber stuff and my progress here.
Yeah. If you had one piece of advice for people, because what we like to do on the podcast is like, obviously there's a lot of denseness and science that we work on, but we like to like end it with something actionable and more simple. I think we talked about a lot of those things, hips, fiber. But outside
Mhm.
of those two things, what's something that you've done in your wellness journey that's made a huge impact? And I'm putting you on the spot here. So, and you can't be cutting out gluten, can't be the stuff we talked about, and it can't be the hip mobility.
During football or post football?
Doesn't matter, either one.
In my wellness journey, I'm trying to think of something that is applicable to all people, because I'm a little bit, I mean, both of us are a little bit more nuanced with our specific stomach
Yeah, how dialed.
needs.
Yeah.
Yeah, how dialed we have to be. But I think it's just, I think it's just creating for yourself systems and habits and routines that you don't even have to think about, and creating a structure for your day that isn't forced, that feels natural, that feels sustainable, and then it just becomes a lifestyle. And so, um, like specifically with my mornings, how I fast. So I started drinking. I've been drinking tea for a couple of months, and so it kind of brings something exciting. As soon as I wake up, I make my bed, all that. I go brew my tea, and then that's in my routine. That's my habit for the morning, and it's a healthy one. Like I don't put any sugar in it. It's just something kind of fun relative to water for me to drink. And I think that's the biggest thing is just creating healthy habits.
You ever heard of the book Atomic Habits?
I've heard of it. I haven't read it.
It's everything you just said and some, but it's James Clear. And yeah, it's about all of those things. You have to make it like you got to make it easy.
Yeah.
And you can't just get rid of a habit. Say you have a habit that's not serving you. You need to replace it, right?
Yes.
Replace it with something better. Get rid of the temptations. Bring in
Yes.
something new. So maybe if you snack on unhealthy food at night, you get some cashews and put them in a bowl right there on your table so that you get the urge to snack. And instead of being like, no, you can't snack, you say, no, I'm going to snack on something that actually serves me and helps me. And it's right there in front of me.
I like that a lot. Replacing habits with healthier habits. So yeah, if you drink a morning coffee, maybe you can make it a tea. If you drink or eat a nighttime sugary, maybe make it a healthy fat. I like that.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you, homie. It's always great connecting and learning from you and following your journey. We will definitely, actually, we should do an update on this. I would love to hop on quick in like 4 weeks and seeing where we're at, seeing if we go from a 9 to an 8. I think we'll do a little check in.
No, I'm definitely down to hop back on, get a little update. It's always good talking to
All
you,
right, my
Ryan,
guy. Appreciate you.
for sure.